The tube rips free before I can stop it. My daughter's eyes go wide. No sound comes out. She has never had a sound to give. The oxygen line hangs loose against her wheelchair tray, hissing softly into the recycled cabin air. Around us, 20,000 feet of nothing holds up a metal tube full of strangers, and one woman in a cobalt blazer is standing over my child with her hand still raised. "It was blocking the aisle," she says. "I have a flight to catch." My daughter cannot scream. She cannot cry out. She can only shake, small fists curling against her blanket, her breath going ragged through the half-connected line. I feel my own pulse slow down instead of speeding up. That is the part nobody tells you about real danger. The calm that arrives instead of panic. I look at the woman's face. Her lipstick is a shade of red that costs more than her sense. Her rings catch the cabin light. She has no idea what she just touched, and no idea whose hands are about to fix it. A flight attendant is already running down the aisle, eyes wide with alarm. Passengers are half standing in their seats, phones rising like a wave. I reach for my daughter's tube with hands that have done far more delicate work than this, in rooms with far more at stake than a coach cabin. I reconnect the line in 4 seconds. Her oxygen numbers climb back on the little monitor clipped to her chair. Her small shoulders drop half an inch. She is safe. For now. The woman in blue crosses her arms. "Some people," she says, loud enough for the whole cabin to hear, "should not be allowed to fly with that." I say nothing. Not yet. But somewhere behind my ribs, a door that has stayed closed for 6 years creaks open, because she has no idea who just watched her do this. She has no idea what happens next. But to understand why this moment changed everything, I need to take you back to where this all began. My name doesn't matter yet. What matters is that 3 hours earlier, I was just a tired father trying to get his daughter to Denver for a checkup neither of us wanted to think too hard about. Mia is 8. She was born without the ability to speak. Her vocal cords formed but never connected the way they should be. She communicates through a tablet, through her eyes, through the small specific smile she saves only for people who have earned it. 22 years of training had taught me to read pain in a face before a patient could describe it. It had also taught me that some of the most dangerous people in any room are the ones who have never once been told no. That morning, the airport smelled like burnt coffee and hand sanitizer. Mia wore her favorite yellow sweater, the one with a cartoon fox stitched on the pocket. She squeezed my hand twice at the gate, our signal for "I'm nervous, but I'm okay." Her wheelchair folded easily into the gate check line, her feeding tube secured against her tray table exactly the way the specialists had shown me, the way I had redone 100 times myself in operating rooms far more serious than this one. The gate agent smiled at us. An older man across the aisle offered Mia a small paper airplane he'd folded from his boarding pass. She laughed without sound, her whole face lighting up, and for a moment the trip felt like it might just be an ordinary Tuesday. I had one simple goal for that day: get my daughter to her appointment safely, quietly, without incident. I had learned, the hard way, that peace is not something you wait for. It's something you build one calm decision at a time. The badge in my carry-on felt heavier than usual that morning, though I couldn't have told you why. Mia's mother passed away when Mia was 2, a fact I don't share often, not because it's painful to speak of anymore, but because it isn't the interesting part of our story. The interesting part is what came after. The years of therapy appointments squeezed between my own impossible hours. The nights I taught myself, from manuals and videos and trial, how to manage a feeding line so my daughter never had to feel like a burden in her own home. The mornings she woke up and reached for her tablet before she reached for anything else, already trying to tell me something about her dreams. People assume a child who cannot speak has less to say. They are wrong. Mia has more opinions per square inch than most adults I've operated on. She has a favorite color, a favorite cartoon fox, and an opinion about turbulence that she communicates entirely through the pressure of her grip on my hand. She had, by that Tuesday morning, flown with me 11 times. She knew the safety briefing better than most flight attendants. We boarded early, priority seating for medical equipment. The cabin was calm, gentle murmurs, the smell of coffee brewing near the galley, sunlight cutting gold across the headrests. Mia pointed out the window at the clouds, her fingers tapping the glass in the rhythm she uses when she's happy. I remember thinking, this is going to be a good day. I did not yet know that a woman 3 rows back was about to make sure it wasn't. The retention hook. What I didn't know yet was that the woman boarding last, the one holding up the line at the overhead bins, was about to become the reason this flight ended in something none of us would forget. She came down the aisle like she owned the plane and resented sharing it. Late 40s, maybe early 50s, hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. Cobalt blue blazer, matching trousers, a designer bag she held like a weapon. She didn't walk so much as she advanced, each step daring someone to get in her way. Before she even reached our row, she'd already had her first collision. A young mother trying to stow a diaper bag got a sharp. That does not go there. Some of us have overhead space we paid for. The young mother apologized, though she had done nothing wrong. Karen, I would learn her name soon enough, didn't wait for a response. She simply moved on, scanning the cabin like she was looking for the next inconvenience to correct. She found it 3 rows later. Her eyes landed on Mia's wheelchair frame, folded and secured near our row, and on the small medical bag clipped beside it. I watched her face shift from irritation to something colder, calculating, like she'd found exactly the kind of problem she'd been hunting for. She stopped in the aisle, stared at the wheelchair, stared at Mia. Is this going to be a problem the whole flight? She asked, not to me, not to anyone in particular, just loud enough that half the cabin turned. Oh no, she noticed us. I felt the small, cold drop in my stomach that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. I have spent my career learning to identify danger before it fully arrives. I recognized this one instantly. Her first move was almost gentle if you didn't know what to listen for. Sir, she said, leaning slightly into our row. This seat configuration is not ideal for me. I requested extra legroom and this equipment is going to be in my way. It's secured against the seat in front, I said. It won't move during the flight. My daughter has a medical condition, and this is FAA-approved equipment. She didn't look at Mia when I said it. She looked at me, like I was a customer service representative who had personally inconvenienced her. I don't care what it's approved for, she said. I care that I paid for comfort, and I am not getting it. A flight attendant appeared, calm and practiced, the kind of calm that comes from years of managing exactly this type of person. Ma'am, is there a problem I can help with? Yes, Karen said, loud enough that 3 rows craned their necks. This family has equipment blocking my space, and I want it moved, or I want to be reseated in a row that doesn't have this. The flight attendant glanced at Mia, at the wheelchair, at me, and I saw the calculation happen behind her eyes. The same calculation I've watched 100 nurses make when a difficult family member starts making noise on a hospital floor. She tried to explain, gently, that medical equipment took priority under airline policy, that everything was properly stowed and posed no obstruction. Karen wasn't listening. She was performing. This is discrimination against paying customers, she said. I want a supervisor. I want this handled now. I sat with my hand resting lightly on Mia's shoulder, feeling her small body tense at the noise, at the tone, at the attention aimed our way. I have learned, across 2 decades of high-stakes rooms, that the worst thing you can do in the face of manufactured chaos is add your own. So I said nothing more. I let the flight attendant do her job. I breathed slowly, the way I taught 100 junior residents to breathe before their hands ever touched a patient. But underneath that calm, something in me had already started keeping score. 3 minutes later, the flight attendant managed to redirect Karen with practiced patience, offering her a complimentary drink and a promise to look into seating options after takeoff. Karen accepted the peace offering with a sniff, tossing one last glance our way, a look that said this isn't over, before she stalked back to her seat. I exhaled. Mia tapped my arm twice. Our signal. I'm nervous, but I'm okay. I told her the truth, in the small, quiet way she needed to hear it. That lady is having a bad day. It's not about you. You didn't do anything wrong. She nodded, but her small hands stayed clenched around the edge of her blanket for the rest of taxi and takeoff. I should have known that quiet never lasts with someone like Karen. I should have known the first incident was only the opening note of something much louder. What Karen did next made even the flight attendants stop breathing. We were an hour into the flight when it started again. The seatbelt sign had turned off, drink service had come and gone, and the cabin had settled into that low hum of white noise that long flights produce. Mia had fallen half asleep against her tray, her tablet resting on her lap, the oxygen line taped neatly along her arm the way I'd secured it that morning. Karen appeared in the aisle again, this time without any pretense of politeness. "I need to get to the bathroom," she announced. "And this," she gestured sharply at Mia's folded chair frame, "is in my way." "There's clearance on the other side," I said quietly. "Plenty of room to pass." "I don't want to squeeze past medical junk," she snapped. "Some of us don't want to touch whatever that is." A man across the aisle looked up, frowning. "It's a wheelchair, lady. Just walk around it." "I did not ask you," Karen said, rounding on him with startling speed. "This is between me and them." The man didn't back down. He was maybe 60, reading glasses pushed up into gray hair, a paperback novel folded open on his knee. "It's between all of us now," he said calmly. "You made it that way the second you raised your voice at a child." Karen's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, a woman near the front, phone already angled upward, spoke without looking away from her screen. "I'm getting all of this, by the way," she said to no one and everyone. "Every word." A third passenger, a college-aged woman with headphones around her neck, leaned across the aisle toward us. "Ignore her," she said quietly to me, loud enough that Karen could hear it too. "Some people just need somewhere to put their anger. Don't let her put it on your kid." The flight attendant reappeared, her earlier patience visibly thinner. "Ma'am, please lower your voice. There are other passengers." "I don't care about other passengers," Karen said. "I care about my flight, my comfort, and I am not going to be told to just deal with a disruption I didn't agree to." I felt Mia stir beside me, her eyes opening, taking in the noise, the pointing, the attention. Her small hand found mine and gripped it. I kept my voice even. "She can hear you," I said quietly. "Please lower your voice around my daughter." Karen's eyes flicked to Mia for the first time, really looked at her, and something in her expression didn't soften. It sharpened. "Well, if SHE can't handle a normal conversation," Karen said, "maybe SHE shouldn't be on a public flight." A woman too rose up, gasped audibly. "That's a child," she said. "Have some decency." "I have plenty of decency," Karen shot back. "I just also have rights." A young man near the back had his phone raised, recording quietly, his face tight with disbelief. An older woman across the aisle reached out and touched Karen's sleeve. "Ma'am, please. She's just a little girl. Let's all just calm down." Karen yanked her arm away like she'd been burned. "Do not touch me," she snapped. Then, turning back toward us, her voice climbed even louder. "And you?" She pointed directly at Mia. "You need to learn that the world doesn't revolve around your little problem." The cabin went taut with tension. Several passengers were now openly glaring at Karen. One man stood halfway out of his seat before his wife pulled him back down. The flight attendant's radio crackled as she called for backup from the front of the plane. Karen, sensing the room turning against her, didn't retreat. She got louder instead, righteous in the particular way of people who have never once faced consequences. "I am not the villain here," she announced to the cabin at large. "I am a paying customer being forced to sit next to a disruption." Mia's hand was shaking in mine. I leaned down and whispered the only thing that mattered in that moment. "You are not a disruption. You are my daughter, and I am so proud of you." She squeezed my hand back, hard, and held on. This could not go unanswered. And somewhere in the part of my mind that had spent 2 decades staying level under real pressure, a decision was already forming. Not yet, but soon. The flight attendant managed, again, to pull Karen back to her seat, promising a formal complaint would be filed, promising a supervisor at the gate. Karen sat down with the satisfied posture of someone who believed she'd won a battle rather than delayed one. For nearly 45 minutes, the cabin settled into an uneasy quiet. Mia dozed on and off, exhausted from the fear more than the flight itself. I held her hand and watched the clouds shift outside the window and told myself the worst was over. I was wrong. Somewhere over Nebraska, the fasten seatbelt sign flickered on for turbulence. Just as the plane dipped through a rough patch of air, Karen stood abruptly from her seat, ignoring the sign completely, and marched forward toward us with her bag in hand. "I am done," she announced. "I want this equipment moved to the back of the plane, or I want a full refund, and I want it now." The flight attendant, now joined by a second colleague and the purser, tried to guide her back to her seat as the plane shuddered gently through the rough air. "Ma'am, we're in a turbulence event. Please take your seat immediately." "I will not sit next to this," Karen said, gesturing wide at Mia's tray, at her tube, at her entire small existence. "For one more minute." And then it happened. The plane dipped again, a real jolt this time, and Karen, off balance and furious, reached out. Not to steady herself against the seat back, but toward Mia's tray table, toward the line. Her hand closed around the tubing and yanked. The connection tore free with a sharp hiss. Mia's monitor began to beep, a thin, frightened sound cutting through the cabin noise. My daughter's face went from confusion to fear in half a second, her chest working harder against air that wasn't flowing right anymore. Dead silence swallowed the cabin. I did not shout. I did not stand in fury. My hands moved before my mind had finished processing what they'd seen, reconnecting the line with the steady precision of 1,000 hours in far higher stakes rooms than this one. For seconds, 5, the beeping slowed. Mia's numbers climbed back into range. Her small hand found mine again, trembling. I looked up at Karen. She was still standing there, hand slightly raised, as if she hadn't quite processed what she'd done either. But there was no apology forming on her face, only irritation. "It was blocking the aisle," she said. "I have a flight to catch." I did not answer right away. I let the silence stretch, let every eye in that section of the cabin settle on her. Let the moment breathe the way I've learned the worst moments always need to. My breathing was slow, controlled. I looked at her the way I look at complications in an operating room, not with panic but with total focus clarity. "You just disconnected a medical device from a child," I said quietly, mid-flight. Karen's chin lifted. "Some people," she said, loud enough for the whole cabin to hear, "should not be allowed to fly with that." I stood, slowly, not aggressively, the way you stand when you no longer have anything left to prove and everything left to finish. "And who do you think you are?" Karen said, rolling her eyes, already turning back toward her seat like the conversation was over. It was not over. I reached into my jacket, into the inner pocket where I keep the one thing I never travel without, not out of pride, but out of habit built from years of moving through hospitals, checkpoints, and secure floors where identification is not optional. My fingers found the worn edge of the badge. I held it up, not high, not dramatically, just enough for her and everyone near her to see it clearly. Federal Medical Credential. Name, photograph, and beneath it, in small formal lettering, the title that told anyone who read it exactly what kind of calm they had just been screaming at. "I'm the surgeon assigned to the President's medical detail," I said, my voice completely flat. "I've spent the last hour watching you assault my daughter's medical equipment in front of 30 witnesses. A woman near the front audibly gasped. Phones that had been recording lowered slightly, as if the people holding them needed both hands to process what they'd just heard. The man across the aisle who'd first spoken up muttered, "Oh my God." Under his breath, Karen's face changed in slow motion. The irritation drained first, replaced by confusion, then by something closer to dawning horror as she registered the badge, the title, the sudden stillness of everyone around her. Her mouth opened. I wasn't trying to," she started, words tumbling out unfinished, incomplete, useless. "You don't need to explain," I said. "You need to sit down. I'm sure we can just—" She tried again, voice pitching higher. This is clearly a misunderstanding. I have a medical condition myself. I get anxious on flights. Sit down, I said. Quiet. Final. She sat. An older woman near the aisle spoke into the silence, her voice shaking with something between anger and relief. We all saw what you did to that little girl, she said. All of us. Karen said nothing. For the first time since boarding, she had absolutely nothing left to say. The captain's voice came over the intercom moments later, calm and clipped, informing passengers that federal air marshals would be meeting the aircraft upon landing due to a reported onboard incident. A ripple of murmurs moved through the cabin. Karen's face had gone the color of old paper. I sat back down beside my daughter, checked her oxygen levels one more time, and pressed my forehead gently against the top of her head. She reached up and tapped my arm twice. I'm nervous, but I'm okay. Me too, I whispered. But we're going to be fine now. The remaining 90 minutes of the flight passed in a strange, charged quiet. Karen sat rigid in her seat, staring straight ahead, refusing eye contact with anyone. Passengers who had been silent bystanders now leaned toward us with quiet words of support. A woman offering Mia a small pack of stickers from her bag. A teenager 2 rows back giving her a shy thumbs up that made Mia smile for the first time in an hour. When we landed, 2 federal air marshals boarded before the doors even opened for regular deplaning. The rest of the cabin sat in unusual stillness, no one reaching for the overhead bins, no one unbuckling early, every eye tracking the 2 marshals as they moved down the aisle with quiet, unhurried authority. I briefed them clearly, precisely, the same way I brief a trauma team. Facts first, timeline second, no embellishment. I told them about the first small incident at boarding, about the aisle confrontation an hour in, about the moment Karen's hand closed around my daughter's oxygen line during turbulence. I kept my voice level throughout, the way you learn to keep it level when a room full of people is waiting to see whether you'll fall apart. The recordings from at least 4 different passengers were referenced, timestamps compared, statements gathered. The woman near the front, who had been filming the entire time, handed her phone over without hesitation, scrolling to the exact moment the line tore free. The older man with the paperback novel gave his account in 3 clean sentences, the kind of witness testimony that lawyers dream about. Even the teenager with headphones stepped forward, unprompted, to confirm what she'd heard Karen say about Mia not belonging on a public flight. Karen tried one last defense as they approached her row. I have a lawyer, she said, though her voice had lost every trace of its earlier command. This is going to look very different once my attorney gets involved. One of the marshals looked at his tablet, then at her, entirely unmoved. Ma'am, you're being detained for interference with a medical device and disorderly conduct aboard a federal aircraft. You can discuss your attorney with the officers at the gate. The cabin, quiet the whole flight, erupted into something close to applause as she was walked off the plane first, ahead of every other passenger, her cobalt blazer suddenly looking less like power and more like a costume with the air let out of it. She did not look back at us. She could not. Mia watched her go, small fingers curling and uncurling against her blanket, and then she reached up and tapped her tablet twice. I read the words as they appeared on the screen. Is it over? It's over, I told her. You did so good. I am so proud of you. She smiled the smile she only gives to people who've earned it, and for the first time in hours, her small shoulders dropped completely, all the tension finally leaving her body. The cabin felt different once Karen was gone. Lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the recycled air itself. Passengers who had been strangers 3 hours earlier now leaned across the aisle to check on us, to smile at Mia, to say the kind of small human things people say when they've watched something hard resolve into something fair. The woman who'd offered Mia stickers came by one more time before we deplaned, crouching down to Mia's eye level. You were so brave, she said softly. Braver than most grown-ups I know. Mia typed a quick message and turned the tablet toward her. Thank you for being nice. The woman's eyes went bright and wet, and she squeezed Mia's hand gently before standing to go. I checked Mia's oxygen levels one final time before we gathered our things, watching the numbers hold steady and strong. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, and she looked up at me with the specific calm of a child who has just learned, in the most frightening way possible, that someone will always stand between her and the world's cruelty. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, then typed one more line. "I knew you would fix it." I didn't have words for a moment. 22 years of training, all the calm I'd built across a career of high-pressure rooms, and my daughter's simple faith in me still managed to undo me more than anything Karen had said all flight. "I will always fix it," I told her. Every single time. We disembarked slowly, Mia's chair rolling steady beneath her, the gate agent who'd smiled at us that morning now waiting with visible concern, already having heard some version of what happened. She knelt beside Mia's chair and told her, gently, that she was one of the bravest passengers she'd ever seen board a plane. What that day confirmed for me wasn't really about Karen at all. It was about the quiet, ordinary decency of strangers who choose to speak up when it costs them nothing to stay silent. It was about how many people, given the chance, will stand on the right side of a small child's dignity. Karen was the loudest thing on that plane. She was not, in the end, the strongest. I think, too, about how close that moment came to going differently. If no one had spoken up, if the flight attendants had simply let Karen have her way to keep the peace, if I had lost my temper instead of my patience. There is a version of that Tuesday where Mia remembers only fear, where the lesson she carries forward is that the world is loud and cruel and indifferent to children who cannot defend themselves out loud. I am grateful every day that this was not the version we lived. In the weeks that followed, the story took the shape these stories usually take once they leave the confines of a single aircraft. Karen, whose full name, Karen Whitfield, appeared in the official incident report, was charged with interference with a flight crew and reckless endangerment involving a minor's medical device. Charges that do not disappear quietly no matter how many lawyers get involved. Her employer, a mid-sized property management firm where she had served, unsurprisingly, on the board of her own HOA, placed her on leave within a week of the story circulating. The HOA board she'd served on for 6 years, the one neighbors had quietly complained about for years without consequence, used the incident as grounds to remove her from her position entirely, citing conduct unbecoming of a representative of the community. Neighbors who had once been afraid to speak up against her fines and petty rule enforcement suddenly found their voices, filing their own complaints in a wave that had clearly been waiting for permission. It turned out Karen's cruelty on that flight was not an isolated event. It was simply the first time it had been witnessed by people with nothing to lose by speaking against her. The recordings from that flight, uploaded by more than one passenger, spread further than any of us expected. What started as a private family's worst hour on a Tuesday flight became, briefly, a conversation millions of strangers were having about entitlement, about vulnerability, about what it costs a person to finally be seen clearly by everyone around them at once. News outlets picked up the story within days, though I declined every interview request. Mia's privacy mattered more to me than anyone's curiosity. Mia, for her part, healed the way children often do, faster and more completely than the adults around them expect. She still taps my arm twice, sometimes on flights, our old signal, but now it comes with a small private smile, like she's letting me in on a joke only the two of us understand. Her checkup in Denver, the whole reason for that flight, went well. Routine. Unremarkable. Exactly what we'd hoped for before Karen ever boarded. The experience changed me too, though not in the way people might expect. I did not become angrier or more suspicious of strangers. If anything, I became more certain of something I'd always believed but rarely had proof of, that most people, when given a clear moment to choose between comfort and courage, choose courage. The man who spoke up first. The woman who reached for Karen's sleeve. The teenager with the shy thumbs up. None of them owed us anything. They gave it anyway. One unexpected outcome came almost a month later, when the airline reached out directly, not with a lawsuit waiver or a canned apology, but with a genuine policy review focused on staff training around medical equipment and passengers with disabilities. A small thing in the grand scheme of a single bad flight. But small things, done consistently, are how the world actually changes. I still fly with Mia several times a year for checkups, for visits to family, for the ordinary reasons families travel. She is not afraid of planes. If anything, she has become the calmest passenger I know, watching the safety demonstration with the focus of someone who has already survived worse than turbulence. Sometimes another passenger will glance at her wheelchair, at her feeding line, with the particular hesitation of someone unsure how to feel about it. I no longer worry the way I used to. I have learned that most people, given a single beat of decency modeled in front of them, will choose to be kind rather than cruel. Tonight, Mia is asleep in her own bed, her tablet charging on the nightstand, her stuffed fox tucked under one arm. The house is quiet in the particular way houses get quiet after a hard season finally passes. I think about that flight sometimes, not with anger, but with a strange kind of gratitude, the way you're grateful for a diagnosis caught early, or a storm that passed without doing its worst damage. Some people mistake calm for weakness. They see patience and assume it means someone will never push back. But real strength rarely announces itself before it's needed. It waits quietly, prepared, until the exact moment it's required, and then it simply does what it always intended to do. If this story reminded you that the quietest person in the room is sometimes the one holding all the power, you already know what that means for the next time you witness something you know is wrong. Stand up anyway.